Alrighty, well, everyone, welcome to our What is SASE webinar with NetGain and Aruba/Silver Peak. We're very excited to have you all here. My name is Maddie Regis. I am the Marketing Content Coordinator for NetGain Technologies, and joining me today is Kevin Russell with Aruba and Silver Peak, who are one of our partners. So Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, Maddie. So appreciate everybody's time today and giving the opportunity to learn a little bit more about how the technology is evolving and what we're seeing within the transformation of the wide area network. It's become very apparent that with all of the changes over the last year, there's a lot going on, and I think there's a lot of confusing terms that have been thrown around and led to a little bit of confusion on trying to figure out exactly where to start. What do all these things mean and how all this comes together? So real quick, I'll introduce myself. Again, Kevin Russell. I'm a systems engineering manager for the Edge Connect team within Aruba. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but the Edge Connect platform was an acquisition that HPE and Aruba made just a year ago now, a $1 billion acquisition to add to the portfolio to enable that WAN transformation and bring some of these pieces together, and we'll talk about how all that's evolving and where we're going from there. But it's obvious with the new opportunities and challenges, work from home, the digital transformation, it's very apparent now that we see wide area networking and security are kind of coming together now at this point. And as I was saying earlier, I think that's led to a little bit of confusion. And I want to have really three goals that I want to provide to you today. And first off, I want to help define that term SASE that we keep hearing about, Secure Access Service Edge, and talk a little bit about exactly what that means. Then I want to introduce you to Silver Peak and the acquisition that HPE and Aruba made a year ago, talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk about the Aruba strategy for how we're addressing SASE and what that means from our perspective. So today I hope to cover those three things for you. As Manny said, please keep it interactive. If you have any questions as we go along, let me know. I'm happy to address those throughout the presentation. So the first thing I want to do is define that term SASE, and it means Secure Access Service Edge. And it's a term that was developed 2-3 years ago by Gartner to talk about the next generation edge architecture. And I think the word there, architecture, is very important because a lot of people I'll talk to think that SASE is a product, but in fact, it's an architecture made up of several different technologies that are providing that next generation security and WAN capability. So those services are, first off, SD-WAN. So the ability to provide the next generation routing, build your next generation wide area network utilizing things like MPLS, broadband, internet, bringing all of those transports together and virtualizing all of those into one wide area network. A cloud access broker. So now we start layering in the security pieces of this, or web services gateway for handling your cloud service firewalling and security components. Being able to layer in layer 3 or 4 firewall, staple firewall. So what's going to happen at the edge? IDS, IPS, how that might affect traffic, or how we're going to inspect our traffic that's maybe exiting the branch or east-west within the branch locations or the data centers.
And Kevin, what does IDS stand for?
Intrusion detection and system or prevention.
Cool.
So if we're looking for, zero trust access, so remote access, how our users are going to be able to provide access to the different applications, how they're going to be able to come to the network. There may be a VPN that might be tied into this, and then being able to orchestrate all that and tie that together securely and easily. So that's the architecture that defines SASE, those different components. So why was this? Why did Gartner, or why has the market started to look at this as an architecture? And so let's take a little step back here. There we go. So if we take a step back, I've got 2 examples on why the SASE architecture has become very important. If we look at the left example, that's our legacy environment. You would have a very protected perimeter where you would have a data center protected by a firewall. You would then have applications and remote locations coming into that data center and accessing the applications that exist within that data center. Or if they're accessing applications that existed on the internet, they would basically hub and spoke through the data center. So those remote locations, that traffic comes into the data center, back out to the internet. Same thing for your remote users. If they're accessing applications, they would be getting remote access through a VPN into the data center, and a lot of times they would be going back out to the internet through that VPN client as well too. Or you might have a policy set up for split tunneling to allow those users to direct access to those applications on the internet. However, what we're seeing now with the new paradigm and the new model is that the wide area or network, where that perimeter is now dissolved. It exists everywhere. So we have users, remote locations, branches that are accessing cloud-based applications. And that has led to a next generation of security where you might see secure web gateways or CASB solutions like a cloud access security broker, zero-touch network access, threat prevention, DNS services, firewalls as a service. Those types of services now have evolved to help provide security for you. So you can say, well, now I've got these users accessing these different SaaS-based applications or these different cloud-based environments. How do I have control over that? And how do I maintain my security posture for those different types of applications and protect my data still? So it's become a real challenge, and that's where we've seen these cloud-based applications security services have evolved to address that need. But if you look at this picture here, you'll see that there's not really anything that's tying together. The data center is not the pivot point for bringing these different services together. And you can see that in the cloud is not the pivot point for that either. We still have our remote users and our remote locations that we have to bring in. So it's become very apparent is that the edge is that pivot point. So when you hear companies like Aruba or any other company that runs around and they keep saying that it's about the edge services, this is what they're talking about. The edge is that transformation point for the new next generation wide area network. And that's where you're going to be able to address the security and the access and the performance and all those things that are important to the users in those applications. It's very apparent that the edge is where that transformation is going to take place. The edge is what's going to bring together the cloud and your data center services and manage that into one network. So now, before I start talking about how Aruba is addressing that SASE model, I want to step back a little bit and introduce you to Silver Peak. So Silver Peak was a company that was founded in 2004, and it was founded as a WAN optimization company. But it was interesting. They were doing things like data reduction on traffic, looking for repetitive patterns and reducing the bandwidth requirements for applications. They were doing things like TCP latency optimization. So they were improving the performance and speeding up applications across very loss sensitive, latency sensitive networks and improving performance for those users and those environments. But it was interesting because when they started doing this, they started off doing some things that foreshadowed some of the basic tenets of what SD-WAN are today. For example, they were building tunnels between the appliances. Silver Peak was doing things like path conditioning, where they are able to improve the performance across latency sensitive networks, where they could protect the integrity of an application like voice and video and do that no matter what the transport is, whether it's an MPLS or a broadband connection. They were able to maintain the integrity of that traffic so that it was so you got the best call quality. They were doing things like dynamic path selection. So they're utilizing all the transports that were available. So what was interesting is that as a WAN optimization platform, it really foreshadowed what SD-WAN is today. In essence, Silver Peak was doing SD-WAN before it was even defined as something. So Silver Peak didn't just wake up one day and say, we're going to become a software-defined WAN company. In fact, they evolved into a software-defined WAN company. So what the end result is today is they have a very mature, feature-rich, best-of-breed approach for building the best possible wide area network that's going to allow the control over that network, provide the best possible performance, and allow you to start introducing additional services around security and role-based access and things like that. And the thing that Silver Peak is really focused on today is we've got the performance down and the wide area network down. Now we're really moving from being what we call a SD-WAN or software-defined WAN, moving to a self-driving WAN, building in and focusing around automation and orchestration as the next generation of the WAN, really trying to take it to the approach that any opportunity that there is to build an automation or an orchestration function, that we're going to do that to make the WAN easier to manage, make it automated, and provide intelligence to and automation to address potential issues, get ahead of problems, or correct for those as well too. So that's what was interesting then. If you go back that year ago when Aruba and Hewlett Packard were looking at rounding out the portfolio and figuring out how to continue down with this edge and address this pivot point that's taking place between your data centers and the cloud applications and environment. And it's looked at the market, and it was really clear that when you look, you could categorize the different products that were out there and the vendors that were addressing this. So you have your platforms that were built in the data center, like a Palo Alto or a Checkpoint or a Fortinet. And you have your services that has evolved with the security perimeter evolving, that are developed in the cloud, like a Zscaler or a Netscope or a Cloudflare. But when you look at the story between Aruba and Silver Peak, these are both platforms that were developed at the edge, all edge services focused around that. It was their ideal solutions for addressing that pivot point. So it made sense to bring the two companies together and to continue to evolve this story. And so that's where I want to talk about for the remainder of the presentation. We've identified what SASE is. We've talked a little bit about how the environment's changed, and now we've talked about how Silver Peak and Aruba coming together. So let's talk a little bit more about how that vision is evolving and where we're at with that today and where we're going to. So if you're not already familiar with Aruba, Aruba has what they call their ESP platform, the Edge Services Platform. And what this is it's a suite of products tied together under one umbrella for visibility and orchestration. So there's 3 tiers to it. The first is the Connect tier, start at the bottom, which is a unified infrastructure. You're looking at wireless switching, role-based connectivity, all of these hardware components. That infrastructure is tied together under one umbrella of visibility called Aruba Central, a cloud-based management solution that provides all of that reporting and automation and orchestration for that, all of that under that unified infrastructure. The next tier is the Protect, and that's where we're going to spend most of our time today talking about under the Protect tier, and that's where the Aruba Edge Connect platform comes in, as well as the SD branch. So there's 2 SD WAN solutions that we can talk about to address specific needs, and that's where we're coming to tying the edge pivot point into this, and also layering in our security components as well. And then finally, the third tier is the Analyze and Act, which is AI Ops, which allows you to provide visibility within the environment. It understands what's normal, the behaviors within the environment, uses AI to identify anomalies or issues, and allows you to get ahead of problems. So we'll talk a little bit more about how the Edge Connect will also be tying into AI Ops as well too. But like I said, most of the discussion today is going to focus around that Protect layer within the ESP platform. So this is where we're really looking at tying all of this together, and this is where I want to talk about how Silver Peak has become central to all of these different services, and how we're going to start, or how we're now where we're at with the not really just the integration, but how we can truly innovate in this space and leverage the best of breed technologies that we have with Aruba, with Silver Peak, and then with our partners. So if we look at Silver Peak here, you can see in this graphic that Silver Peak is really becoming the central piece of all of this. And we have all of these different components now that are going to be tying into the platform and providing different types of services. So if we start at the top, we have Aruba Central. Again, that's that visibility, the orchestration across all of the different unified infrastructure. Now, there's a lot going on within Silver Peak platform at the Edge Connect platform, and we have a management piece of that called the Orchestrator. Because there's a lot of machine learning, there's AI going on, there's all the orchestration, it's a lot to bring into Central. So we're going to start with the integration into Central where it makes sense, and that's providing visibility and reporting. So the first pieces of that are rolling out right now, where we're going to be able to take the reporting and the information, flow information, the device telemetry information, that type of thing. We're going to those types of items are going to be rolled up into Central, where you can go into Central, see the health and status of your appliance. Maybe you see an error that's occurred. You can click onto that error and it'll take you right into the Edge Connect Orchestrator so you can see exactly what you're trying to troubleshoot or identify. Or if there's a flow that doesn't look right, you want to drill into that. You can go from Central and drill right into the Edge Connect Orchestrator for that. So we're bringing those together in a way that makes sense. Over time, you'll start to see more of those services roll up into Central, but we're going to do that at a deliberate pace to make sure that we do it right. The next piece, which is also being released right now, is our integration with ClearPass. And if you're not familiar with ClearPass, I'll talk a little bit more about this. But this is what we provide for the dynamic segmentation for role-based and device user-based security access within an environment. So you can identify devices, identify users, place them into their roles, and give them access to the applications that are relevant for their function within the organization. So ClearPass is our next piece that we're rolling out, as I said, right now, that will allow you to develop that policy and carry that across the WAN. And I've got some slides here later in the presentation that'll show that to you in detail. Also, then we look at SD-LAN and SD-Branch. As I said, there is SD-Branch is also an SD-WAN solution. So if you have a very prescribed solution or you have some basic needs with an SD-WAN, maybe SD-Branch would be an approach for you. If you have more complex needs, then maybe you would be looking at an Edge Connect. And what we're doing is building the easy button to tie those two fabrics together. It's going to be able to integrate those two environments. So if you choose one for maybe think retail stores, and then maybe for the manufacturing piece, you might have more advanced needs and look at Edge Connect, then we can use that easy button to tie those two environments together. That's the integration that we'll be working on over this next year. What we've also just introduced is our unified threat management system. So one of the things that I've been really excited about with the acquisition by Aruba is that they have an established UTM environment. And now Silver Peak is tied into that. So we're adding our IDS functionality, which is rolling out right now, into the Silver Peak appliances. So now not only are we doing our inspection with some of the other technologies that I'll talk about, but now we're also able to layer in intrusion detection and prevention as well. And then finally, AI Ops is the area that we'll be working on over this next year to be able to take the information that we're gathering within the Edge Connect appliances, rolling that into AI Ops so you get that comprehensive view across your entire environment and being able to get ahead of issues, identifying problems, understand normal behaviors versus anomalies, and having those automatically identified and being able to address those. So what we're going to end up here with is this comprehensive edge security approach. It's going to allow us to not only have the dynamic segmentation on the LAN, but also across the WAN. You'll get a consistent user experience for all of this. And the beauty of this is that there's no vendor lock-in at any stage. You can take a multi-vendor approach and figure out where it fits for you to begin your journey down this path, whether you're looking at trying to identify that traffic from role-based access, whether you want to focus on starting with the pivot point, wireless, layering in the security for components. It really matters. You can focus on what's best for your environment and start there. So at no point are you locked into any single vendor in any of this. So let's take a look at that pivot point here with the Edge Connect appliances and what's taking place here. So if we look at how the SASE journey begins and how this happens, this kind of paints the picture of where that ideal edge being that ideal pivot point for this transformation. We can place the Silver appliance you can see here in the edge at the edge location here. In this case, we've got a branch location, and then we're using something we call adaptive internet breakout to be able to dynamically steer that traffic around the policy that you develop. We use a technology within Edge Connect called First Packet IQ, and what First Packet IQ does is that it identifies applications on the very first packet. And this is really important, especially when you're talking about applications that, you have statefulness coming into play, you have NAT. You can't identify an application, have it steered in one direction and realize, oh, I meant to send that out to the internet, not through my data center. You can't suddenly flip that flow, it'll break it. So it's really important to be able to identify those applications on the very first packet. We do that through a combination of DNS information about that application. We do that for IP address information and the geographic locations of those IP addresses. So we do that for the top 10,000 plus SaaS applications, 300 million domains. we know all the information there is to know about those applications, so we can identify it on the first packet and steer it correctly based around your security policy. So if you have applications that you want to have backhauled and sent through the data center, those can be appropriately identified, sent out and inspected through your firewall that you have at your traditional data center at your perimeter there. If you have applications that you want to send directly out to the internet, maybe Office 365 is an example. You want to send that direct to the internet. I trust that application. We can handle that and send it direct. Or if you want to service chain that to a cloud-hosted security service like a Checkpoint or a Netscope, Prisma, Zscaler, we can send that traffic through a service chain event into that cloud environment for inspection, where you now have control on that aspect of your perimeter for those SaaS-based applications or cloud-based services. So you get that dynamic policy. We use that adaptive internet breakout capability that you can now layer that in. Now, if we talk a little bit more about those cloud-based security services, we are able to, through automation and orchestration, add those into the data path. So for example, if we talk about Zscaler, we have full API integration into Zscaler, to the point where once you have your Zscaler environment set up, we can manage all the security policy through the Edge Connect Orchestrator. So it becomes one seamless view, so that you can go ahead and through automation, we'll build all of the IPsec tunnels into Zscaler, and then you simply have an object then that you drag into your policy that can say, well, this traffic I'm identifying as Salesforce. I want to identify that. I'm going to send that application into Zscaler. If Zscaler is not available, I want to backhaul it through the data center. If that's not available, then I want to drop it, or I want to break it out and send it direct. Really, it's up to the policy that you want to develop around that. The flexibility is there. So that, and for services that don't quite have that level of API integration yet, where the vendors haven't offered that, we've built an orchestration tool to build tunnels into those environments. So we can use that orchestration tool, automatically provision all of the IPsec tunnels, say into a Netscope, and then we have, again, a policy object that we can just use to drag and drop right into our policy flow, so that you can identify that traffic and steer it in the right direction that you want to have, so that your security policy can be applied to that flow. So that way you end up with that's where that SASE model comes into play. So now we have the edge as the pivot point, and through automation intelligence, we're able to layer in the security services all through the Edge Connect Orchestrator. Now, it would be now we just didn't want to stop there with just saying, okay, well, that's addressing the SD-WAN component. Now we've addressed the cloud security component. There's more to it, and we want to be able to address all of how that traffic is going to be segmented on the LAN, and we want to identify that as well too, so we can carry that segmentation through to the WAN and to wherever the destination is. And it's really important if you think about like how IoT devices are really driving this. In fact, I met with a healthcare system yesterday. They have a pretty flat network, and all of the IoT devices are providing them a real challenge in how they can control that. Keep creating VLAN after VLAN after VLAN just isn't scalable. It's not functional. And so we want to talk about a little bit about how we're able to layer that into the solution as well too. And that's where the solution to this is Zero Trust Dynamic Segmentation. So the next few slides are going to dig into this a little bit more, so you get a clear picture of how this is going to look. So the first thing if you're familiar with ClearPass, this is where it's able to identify roles and devices and associate those roles and devices with the specific applications that they need to access. So if we look at this example here, we have our security cameras that are accessing a surveillance headend that exists in the cloud. And because we probably have an Edge Connect appliance sitting in the cloud in this example, we've got Edge Connect appliances sitting out at our branch locations in our data center, we're able to provide that security posture for those devices and for those roles, and that can carry through all the way through the software-defined WAN fabric. So in this case, we have our surveillance headends. Our cameras are only accessing that cloud-based application. That data is being transmitted to the surveillance headend and being stored and retained in the cloud. And that's the only thing that those devices are able to see and access. Another example, we have our transaction processing. So our point of sale systems are accessing a database that exists within our data center. Again, because of the role-based identification, that's all that they're able to access and see. And then finally, we have our HR applications. In this example, we have contracted recruiters. So they're external, coming in to access various applications that exist between the data center and within the cloud. So that dynamic policy is being applied to those applications, no matter, again, where they exist. So if we were to stack this up and give you another view on how these come together, if we start at the top with the blue, that's where the Edge Connect policy engine is taking place. So the Edge Connect engine is going to identify those applications by the name, again, like I said before, the DNS information, the addressing, ports, and that then will be placed into the application-driven policy. In fact, we call that application-driven policy the business intent policy. When we're designing policy for our environment, we start at the top down. You think of the traditional WAN environment is really a bottom-up approach. You design the WAN, and the applications are then forced to fit into that WAN design. And the approach with the Edge Connect, you focus on the application and start at the top down. So it's what's best for the application, taking advantage of the various transports and maintaining the performance of those applications through path conditioning as well. We also layer into that then from ClearPass, where we can identify the role, device type, the user, the security posture, and then we get that context-driven policy. Those come together as part of that business intent policy then. That's where we're able to then provide, based around the information collected from the policy engine on the Edge Connect and from ClearPass, that we're now able to have that business intent policy that's going to provide the quality of service. It's going to provide our SLA objectives around those applications. It's going to provide the segmentation, identify whether we're going to break out that traffic and send it direct out the internet or backhaul it. It's also going to layer in our security policy, our routing policy, and optimization as well. That's where this all comes together. Another view just to see it in practical implementation, so you can get a view of this, where we talk about the end-to-end segmentation. First off, we start with the physical transports, what we call the underlay. You might have 2 to 4 different types of transports, maybe your MPLS in this example, internet, LTE. Then we layer in the Edge Connect appliance, where we are able to create our business intent overlay, which virtualizes all of those transports, where all of those transports become active, and we provide our path conditioning and our virtual networks across those transports. In this example, we've developed policy for real-time applications, mission-critical applications, and a default to catch the rest. You might have 3 to 5 of those different types of overlays that are being applied to your environment. Then we look at a coarse grain segmentation, where we create zones within the environment. You might have tens of zones in the tens, where we might have a guest or a general, voice video, our POS systems, and our IoT devices, all segmented based around the zones where those would exist. And then we can layer in the fine-grained segmentation with our dynamic segmentation. This might be hundreds or thousands, where you're talking about users or devices, and they can then be associated with a role where you can then maintain the security posture of that application, those devices end to end throughout the entire WAN fabric and out to the internet for the services that they're required to access. So that's where you can see all of this coming together with that dynamic segmentation capability. Now, if we continue the story with our unified branch security, we can talk a little bit more about how this is evolving within the Edge Connect. And I touched on this a little bit, but we want to talk about the visibility that you're able to maintain throughout the entire flow, and how these applications are being utilized and identified, providing complete threat visibility, getting policy-driven enforcement, and able to correlate that and manage it to the incident. So if we look at this, we're able to provide application user-aware app user-aware firewall within the appliances. We get the cloud security integrations that I was talking about, like the Zscaler, Checkpoint, Netscope, and Palo Alto, Prisma, others. We're able to provide the intrusion detection and prevention as well, so we can identify that traffic and act on it. You can identify application and URL reputation, as well as content filtering. And then being able to provide deep packet inspection where it makes sense, saying I've got legacy CIFS traffic, and identifying that traffic by those different devices, those application types. So you get that at the branch, and then we layer in those security services with the cloud security integrations, gives you that complete picture for that SASE model that we're talking about. Now, as I said, all of this is going to roll up and provide visibility through Central, but I did want to take a moment to talk about the Edge Connect Orchestrator. It's really intended, this is where the entire Edge Connect solution is managed and all the visibility that it provides as well too. So all that intelligence, the automation, templates, reporting and visibility is all handled through the Unity Orchestrator that for the Edge Connect appliances. So we can identify all of our devices. We can get a real-time view onto every flow that's taking place across the WAN fabric, traffic that's being broken out and sent out to the internet. Then you can drill down into each one of those and see how your routing policy has been applied, how your security policy has been applied, optimization, QoS, all of these different things are then available even down to the individual flow level. So there's quite a bit of information that you can take out of this. And that just gives you an idea of the information then that we're going to be taking and rolling up into Central, where you'll be able to get that big comprehensive view from LAN to WAN, back to your LAN and out to the internet. So I wanted to give you one other view of the Aruba Secure Edge portfolio, just to see how this is evolving and so you can see a complete picture. So if we look at the bottom, you can see where we've got a VPN client with the VIA client. So you can use a client to come into your environment or into the cloud. If you have remote users that are working from home and you want to provide them a consistent experience, just as if they were in the office, then you can look at remote access points, providing wireless capability and allowing that role-based security context with a clear path being able to be applied to those devices, even within user working from home or a small micro branch. Then we look at the SD branch, or the SD solution for max integration, where SD branch today is integrated into Central. So if that's that one point of view that you want to have for the entire environment, you can look at that. Or if you have a very simple prescribed deployment, then you would look at an SD branch solution. Again, like I used the example earlier, think maybe 7-Eleven stores with very basic needs, manufacturing where you might need a more advanced solution, then you would look at an Edge Connect platform. With the advanced routing capability, giving the migration path from your legacy environment to a SD-WAN fabric, being able to provide the best possible quality of experience with advanced capability like path conditioning, where we can provide technologies like forward error correction and packet order correction, best of breed overlay development policy, the edge security pieces as well too, and being able to service chain and layer that in, where we can take those points of presence across the data center that you see across the top, or within our cloud environments, and layer in those different types of services. So you can see the solution coming together here. So the other thing I wanted to do is just walk you through the various scenarios so that you can see how all of this works together and how this all operates seamlessly. So the first thing we want to identify is our east-west segmentation. So if we're looking within the branch and we're accessing other areas of zones or VLANs within an environment, being able to apply our UTM capabilities, our universal threat management, and do that at the edge, so that even for traffic within the branch, we can identify misbehaving traffic, take action on that. The other thing then we want to be able to is provide that same visibility to the applications that are going directly out to the internet. So again, being able to apply the UTM engine to those applications as well too that are being broken out and sent to the internet. If we have applications that are being backhauled, again, being able to provide our security policy for that traffic as well. In that case, it may be backhauled out through a data center and sent directly out to the internet, or we can have that tied into using a third-party UTM, where you might have your traditional data center firewall and want to have that inspect the traffic. So we can integrate that into the solution as well too. If you have applications that exist in the cloud, we can again provide that the UTM capability across that by placing a virtual Silver Peak in the cloud. And the other thing that this will do is this also provides all the path conditioning capability that I've mentioned. So even if you're looking at a UCAS solution like Ring Central or something like that that would exist in the cloud, you want to protect the performance of that traffic, then we can do that as well too. The other thing that I didn't mention is that also as Silver Peak began as a WAN optimization company, we can also still layer in WAN optimization across all of this as well too. So you can put as much into the cloud as you want, but as soon as you start pulling it out, you're going to get charged for it. So we can use WAN optimization to help control those costs and reduce those by providing bandwidth reduction on that traffic and providing it strategically within the environment where it makes sense. Also looking at cloud delivered services. So again, where we were talking about being able to provide service chaining, where we can take Zscaler, Netscope, Prisma, Checkpoint, any of these different types of services, as long as they support an IPsec capability, we can tie into them through either orchestration or an API integration. Being able to layer those services in, so you're getting that complete cloud security along with your edge security services. And then layering in remote access, whether it's through a VIA client, whether it's through a RAP remote access point that I mentioned, or through a third party, we can layer that into the solution as well too, giving you the full suite of capability. So I'm going to conclude just by providing you with just an overview again of everything I just talked about, and tying that together into one slide to kind of paint the picture for you is exactly what it is and the approach that we have with regards to SASE. So again, talking about the EdgeConnect platform, or for best of breed software defined WAN, we're talking about being able to introduce our IPS capability with the EdgeConnect at the edge, zone-based stateful firewalling, edge-to-edge network segmentation, secure internet breakout, and then best of breed SD-WAN routing, WAN optimization, and network visibility and control at the pivot point, at the edge location that we're talking about. Layering in our cloud security services for the best of breed approach. So now you can take a security posture based around what fits for your business. So take whether it's a Zscaler or Prisma or Netscope, being able to layer those different services into the edge and use that through orchestration and service chaining and API integration. And zero trust, layer in the Aruba ClearPass, you get the fine-grained segmentation, you get that rich identity-based context where you get the device type, user role, security posture, and then that policy is enforced and applied across the WAN through the EdgeConnect appliance and out into the cloud. And so with that, I will pause and see if there are any questions that I can address for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kevin. I'm popping back in here, and I am going to just take a look at our questions panel. While I'm doing that, I am going to just launch a quick poll for everyone to respond to, like I mentioned earlier in the webinar, of just, how can we help you meet your technology goals? So I'm going to just go ahead and send that out to the audience, and let me check our questions panel here. All right, so it looks like our first question is, you mentioned that first packet IQ, probably about midway point in your presentation. Someone's asking, how often are app updates received for that first packet IQ?
Yeah, good question. So we use machine learning in the cloud to build that database of applications. So those are provided daily. So every day you get an update around that. So let me give you an example. If you go back a couple of years ago with Office 365, Microsoft made a bunch of changes and rebranded. So they simplified a lot of the applications. They got rid of a lot of the DNS, the domains that were associated with it. If you think back on your traditional legacy firewalls, you probably had to run a script to update the firewall to identify all of those different services. Well, our customers that were using the EdgeConnect platform didn't have to do anything to make a change in their environment, because the machine learning in the cloud, all of those updates, also in the case of Office 365 through API integration, we were able to get all of those updates and build this profile of Office 365, so that when Microsoft made those changes, our administrators, our customers, didn't have to lift a finger to identify those changes. It was all the heavy lifting was done for them. Again, that's where that automation comes into play. So machine learning in the cloud, receive the updates daily. As those changes were implemented by Microsoft, our customers continued using the platform without having to lift a finger. Other solutions, you would have to go out there and update or create an ACL based around that, where you would run a script against that and learn that information. You have to continually update that. So again, looking for all those opportunities for us to provide automation and orchestration. This is a really good example of that.
Absolutely. It sounds like everything about SASE and the model within Aruba is to make everything as streamlined as possible. So I think that's everybody on the webinar can appreciate that for sure. Let's see here. We've got another question, which is, okay, this one's a little bit more general. So looking at this model that you've described at the Aruba model, what is the recommended starting point? You know, is it ClearPass that you mentioned? Is it SD-WAN? Kind of what do you recommend there?
Yeah, and really there's really two answers to it. I mean, it's always going to be what matters most to your organization. If you're starting with the, you know, in the case of the hospital that I mentioned, the hospital healthcare system, it's really obvious for them that ClearPass is something they need to start at. They need to identify that role-based access. However, I will say, generally speaking, if you're looking at a long-term vision and you have a number of goals you want to bring into the environment, you're not addressing, you've got a long-term needs that you're addressing, the best pivot point tends to be at the edge and looking at the SD-WAN solution first. Build your foundation with a wide area network, and then start layering in those services. Because of the orchestration, the automation that's provided, it's really easy to bring in those different types of services. I'll give you another example. I've got a retail customer with around 500 locations. They wanted to leverage Zscaler for all of their stores. They had guest networks in all the stores. They had their internal traffic that they wanted to have apply for the security posture. Lots of cloud-based applications that they're adopting. So they wanted to leverage Zscaler, but we're finding it really difficult to implement that using legacy routers. They're really struggling to get it up and running. They looked at the EdgeConnect platform, deployed that, and once they had the EdgeConnect appliances deployed, they turned on Zscaler across all 500 locations. Took about 15 minutes. All of that was basically plugging in the security information, and then all of that was orchestrated and automatically built. All the tunnels were automatically built, and you had that policy object that you just had to drop into your data flow. And once that was done, about 15 minutes to bring all 500 of those sites compliant with their Zscaler policy. So that's just one example. So really, just in my opinion, that the pivot point is really the best starting point, and then layer in the services as needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And feel free to reach out to us if you have a specific situation that you're still wondering about. We've got one last question here, I believe, which is, what do you think the future of SASE is going to be? So how is this going to integrate, you know, into SD-WAN, into cloud security, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, well, I think we're already there with what's been defined by SASE. The future of SASE is basically now, and as I said earlier at the beginning, it's that architecture. And if you take a look at the approach that we have with Aruba, with the acquisition of Silver Peak, and you look at the services all the way from ClearPass to the edge with EdgeConnect and SD Branch, and then layering in the best of breed security services, that's addressing the SASE model. We take our vision of it is that it's a best of breed approach. And that way, there's no point is there vendor lock-in. You deploy this in a manner that makes sense for your business. So, as you know, if you have a 2-year time frame to do this, or if you need to do it in 30 days, we have a solution that'll help you with that.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's definitely an overarching model to apply to all of the sort of cloud solutions that you have, correct?
Correct, absolutely.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Let me double check, make sure no other questions have trickled in here. I think we are good on answering all of those questions. So Kevin, thank you so much for sharing this information with us today. So again, thanks everyone for joining. Kevin, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. And everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.